The question is always going to come up about my sons and the incident with the Antioch Police Department in December 2020 when I first got elected to office.
These motherfuckers think that I give a shit about being a city council member when it comes to my kids. I absolutely do not.
I've definitely talked to community members who voted for me, who supported me, my run for office. And I have to admit that the number one thing that I regret from that video overall was saying that I didn't care. That I didn't care about being elected to office here in Antioch, that I didn't care about being a city council member because, you know, people elected me to care. And so that really hit home for me. Like that hit me in the heart. And I had to back up and say, like, man, people elected me to care. So I can't say I don't care about the position, because I do. What I also understand is that I'm human, and like, you know, my early traumas are gonna be triggered. And all I can do each time is figure out a way to learn and to do better the next time. Like that's the best part of, you know, living in this society and being human, is that every day you get to start over, despite your mistakes. After all of my experiences with law enforcement early, growing up, you know, experiencing raids, police kicking in your door, running in your house in like full riot gear, pointing guns at children. You know, I was 5 years old the first time I experienced a raid in the home that I grew up in, and I had guns pointed at me as a child. So those experiences kind of like shaped some of, you know, the continued things that I used to experience in the community. And then also just like Trayvon Martin and Eric Garner, and then like all of these collective experiences of watching people in dark bodies, especially Black men, in these situations with law enforcement where they don't walk away alive. And then to be a mom to 2 sons who are growing to be Black men, when I have this encounter with a police department that I don't know, where I don't have relationships, even as a newly elected official in this city, didn't make me feel like I had any like power or authority. And in that moment, all I could do was operate in fear. And the outward expression of fear for me was anger, frustration, and just not understanding how I could live in this community for 8 years, not have one negative interaction or experience with the police department until I get elected to office and my children are put in danger. And so, you know, when you ask, when people ask, could I showed up another way? Could I have been a little bit more tempered? Of course, I'm sure I could have. And I really, you know, I don't even know if I could go back and do it different. I mean, the Facebook Live video, yeah, I was hot. I was steaming. I wanted people in the community, people in my community who I know, who have had similar experiences, like, to understand how frustrated I was and how angry I was and upset that these officers get to do this type. And who else children do they do it to? It wasn't just mine. I'm well educated. I run a whole organization for vulnerable people. I navigate a lot of spaces very well when it comes to politics, as well as public policy for the health and well-being of communities. And I'm very articulate, so I've heard. I'm that, and I'm also the mama that'll fight a bear for my kids. And it just so happened that bear just happened to be these 2 Antioch police officers that day.
Here is what we know tonight. There is an investigation into some officers from the Antioch Police Departments accused of crimes of moral turpitude.
It's described as wicked, deviant behavior that would shock a community.
Moral turpitude crimes are those crimes that have bad intent. So things like fraud and theft and other kinds of malfeasance that erode the public trust.
The last 12, 13 years of my life fighting for racial equity. It's not an accident that the Sycamore community has young people with the most early adverse childhood experiences. I'm willing to be held accountable for my actions. I would just like the people who came before me to be held accountable for their inaction.